Hi everyone. Hello and welcome back to another day here at the online summit Connecting Soul Beings. Today our expert speaker is Robin Shooter from Sydney, Australia. She is a health recovery designer at Empower Total Health. Today's conversation is around plant-based living and plant-based foods to nurture our body, which enables us to reach a high vibrational state so that we are fully connected to our body, to live from a heart-centered place supported by the nutrition that we feed our body with. So grab yourself a cup of coffee or tea and enjoy this wonderful conversation. So I would love to share first with the audience that Robin and I are knowing each other for quite a few years now.
Quite a few years.
And we've worked together quite often, and we've obviously also visited similar networks and other events. And I contacted Robin probably nearly 3 years now this month. Yeah. 3-year anniversary for me this month being plant-based. That's really awesome.
A big anniversary.
Yes, exactly. So because I felt that the way I was nurturing my body through food was not the right way, and I was suffering a long time from a chronic illness, and I felt I'm done with that illness, so we need to do something different and radical. And also working with animals a lot and having them as my friends and really tuning into them, I felt there is no way I can consume them any longer. And so I heard about Robin. I've seen her in action in certain events, and I felt a real pull to connect with Robin. And she has helped me enormously becoming vegan, focusing more on my body, and also dealing with certain emotions and things that are happening to be able to have solid strategies to work from my body perspective. Because as we all know, we like to be in our head.
No.
Too much. And as a spiritual person, I'm also very fluff sometimes because I like to go off with the fairies. But to be able to have someone like you, Robin, to tap into, to stay grounded and really work with the human body so that everything works together is just, it's a gift in my eyes. And it's so enormously important to have that support from you. It's unbelievable. So thank you for that. And thank you for being here.
It has been my pleasure. I love working with you. And I guess I want to pick up on something that you just said, because it reminds me of that very well-worn phrase that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. Mm-hmm. And yes, we are spiritual beings. That's us at our essence. But right now, we have this human body. We are embodied creatures, and we really need to take care of this body, not just the spiritual. Okay, that spirit needs a home, at least while we're in this plane of existence. This is it. This is the home. So,
exactly. For a short period of time.
Good care of it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, and I know, you've been a vegan for over 15 years now, I think.
Not quite that long. I was, my big anniversary would be coming up 13 years now. Okay. Yeah, must be nearly 13 years because my daughter is 13. And prior to that, I mean, I stopped eating animals when I was 15. But as in eating flesh food, eating meat, chicken, fish. But I still had a little bit of dairy, a little bit of eggs, just diminishing quantities over the years until finally by the way, I don't mean the royal we, I don't mean that there's more than one of me, I mean my family. Yes. Decided as a family that we were going to go 100% plant-based.
Yeah.
And my daughter was not quite 1, so she's 13 and a half now. Yep.
Fantastic. Love it. So with that process for you, what was the deciding factor to not consume animals anymore and even go that extra mile of cutting out all the dairy, including your cheese and your milk and all those sorts of things as well?
And
And
the eggs and the
we know with
honey
the
and all
vegans there
the
is
other.
another step with the leather and all that sort of stuff as well. But
Yes,
I'd love to
yes.
keep it now to actually what we put inside our body. What was that actual step? Like, what drove you to eat like that and live like that?
You described a few minutes ago your growing awareness as you began working with animals and tuning into animals until you reached that place where it just didn't sit right with you to actually eat them. And that was my experience at age 15. Although, and look, this is going back a long time. I'm nearly 47, so how do you remember something that happened over 30 years ago? But I have this very, very distinct memory. When I was 15, I was sitting in my bedroom in my family home where I grew up, and I had always considered myself to be an animal lover.
Mm-hmm.
We always had dogs when I was growing up. We had mice. I hand read budgies, and we were just always around animals.
Yeah.
And I loved animals. And I was a junior member of the RSPCA. And I remember one day I was reading their magazine. It was called Wagley. I don't even know if it's still around, but it was the magazine that you got if you became a junior member of the RSPCA. Yeah. And I don't think it was actually anything in that magazine because, as you know, it's not like the RSPCA promotes a vegetarian diet. But I remember just having this moment where I thought, hang on a minute, I can't be an animal lover if I eat them. Like, there's just this fundamental disconnect. You cannot say, I love animals, I'm for the animals, if you're part of the system that enslaves them, that tortures them, and that ultimately kills them. Mm-hmm. And that was my moment. It was just literally just that brick to the head moment where you go, I'm not living in alignment with my principles. I'm saying something about myself, but it just isn't true. Mm-hmm. I'm saying I'm an animal lover, and yes, I love my dog, and I loved my mice and my budgies and whatever. But there's this whole other group of animals that I am behaving in the most unloving fashion toward because I eat them. Yes. Now, at that time, this was 1980, must have been around 86, 87, 86. And so there was no internet, and there weren't even a lot of books around about animal ethics or vegetarian eating or whatever. So the whole dairy and egg side of it was not on my radar. My thinking was just that if they haven't died for me to eat them, then it's okay. And so that's why I went vegetarian, not vegan, back then. I'm not sure that I even knew what the word vegan meant or whether I'd even heard it at that age. It just wasn't in wide currency. So from then it was this gradual progression of learning more and more about how animals were raised, the animals that are used in the food industry, and learning more and more as the years went by, and there was an internet and there were a lot more books and so forth about the dairy industry and the egg industry, and really just getting to the point of recognizing that there was no ethical consumption of animal products. There just isn't. Like, even if you're talking about, say, free-range egg production, well, the male baby chicks are still going to be killed at birth because they have no value to the egg-laying industry. So the cruelty is built in to the system. So, and ditto for dairy. I mean, there's no way around it. You can't allow that mother cow to keep her calf with her after the calf is born and let the calf, nurse from her as nature intended. That calf must be taken away. So there's cruelty built into the system, and it's unavoidable. And the second realization, which came along with my nutrition studies, was that we don't need it. We don't need to eat meat. We don't need to eat chicken or fish or eggs or dairy. There is no requirement for any of those foods. So if I don't need it to survive and thrive, and my kids don't need it, and there's no ethical way of sourcing these foods, that's it. They're out of my life. Those animal foods are out of my life.
Yeah. And it makes sense then, the way you say that and what you've learned. I mean, it makes sense to discontinue,
And
Uh-huh.
I guess I'd add a third leg to that stool, which is that human health improves. It's not just that we have no nutritional necessity for these animal foods. It's that our health improves when we cut them out. And so if you're looking, I suppose, for a more spiritual dimension of this, there it is right there. The thing that is best for the animals and best for the environment, we haven't even talked about that, that's a whole other area,
Oh,
is
yes.
also best for you.
Yeah.
So isn't that something? There's no sacrifice. There's no giving up. There's no suffering. Your health will get better when you cut animal foods out of your diet and base your eating instead on whole, minimally processed plant foods.
Yeah.
Wow, what a system!
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly why I wanted to share this as well with the audience, because I know for me it had such a positive impact, not just on my body, but as me as the human being and the soul being to go plant-based. It has made a dramatic change in how I show up and how authentically I live. Because for me, it really felt like I was cheating the world by continuing the way I used to. And, and to even tune it back to my body, it still has taken a little while. It's taken nearly 3 years, but I know that eating plant-based has made a massive impact on the disease that I used to carry around since 2006. So that it resulted now this year, since February, I have stopped the medication under guidance with my specialist. So, that my body is now able to look after it itself without the help of medication. And yes, we're still in the trial period, and it's still, but it's going very well. And that's really amazing. And I know that has contributed to that significantly.
See, fundamentally, the human body, and I would argue the human mind, is they're self-healing. That movement toward health and well-being is written into every cell. It's written into our spiritual DNA as well. There is always a movement toward health. Until we take our last breath, our bodies are trying to function better. And when you remove animal products and you put in the right plant foods, that self-healing capacity it's not even that it's activated, because it's active all the time, but the impediments to its operation are removed. So, in other words, you look at human physiology, we're built for plants.
Yeah.
The way that people think of food in various ways. And I would argue we think of food in some inappropriate ways. So we think of food as sort of, comfort or reward or whatever. And I'm not saying that we should all just eat grass and have boring meals, but I'm saying fundamentally the purpose of food is to nourish the human body. So food is a fuel. Food is raw materials. It's building materials. And also food is communication. So every bite that we eat, when it's digested and metabolized by the human body, is communicating with our cells. And when you look at the way that plant foods communicate with human cells, and not just human cells, but the bacteria that inhabit our bodies, especially the gut microbiome, when you look at the messages that go through to our cells and the non-human cells, when you eat plant foods, it's an entirely different set of communications to those that happen when people eat animal products. So when you eat plant foods, the information that goes through is inflammation cools down, self-healing programs are activated, aging programs are slowed down when people eat plant foods. Disease processes like atherosclerosis or clogging of the arteries, these are overcome when people eat a plant-based diet, and it's largely because of the way that plant foods communicate with human and bacterial cells compared to the way that animal foods do.
Yeah. Wow, that's very powerful, very powerful. So in terms of the communication, I like when you brought up that word, because what we're aiming for here as well at the summit is to tap into ourselves and to connect and communicate with ourselves at a level that brings us a higher level of energy and to be at a higher vibrational level. so that we can be who we truly are and really shine in that way. And I know this sounds a bit corny perhaps, but I truly feel that
Not
is
to
the way
me.
as well, you know, because people always say
Not to me at all.
you're beaming with health. You know,
Yeah.
that's really connected in that sense. So in your experience, how would a plant-based diet and really looking after your body impact reaching that high vibrational level?
Wow, I'm so glad you raised this. All right, let's kind of let's start at the most basic kind of
Yeah.
growth level and then work our way up. So over, how long have I been in practice? 1995, a long time. How many years is that? 20, getting on 24 years. The most consistent thing that people say to me when they switch from a regular Western style diet to a plant-based diet, and granted, some people have withdrawal reactions in the first few days, okay, they can feel a bit cruddy, and that has to be acknowledged. But after that, the most consistent thing that I hear is, I feel lighter.
Mm.
That's a fairly nondescript, vague term, but it's consistent. I feel lighter. They feel lighter in their bodies. They notice that after a meal, they don't get all sleepy and bogged down. They have more physical energy. And that physical energy results in them wanting to engage in more health promoting behaviors like exercise. And as people get more in tune with their physical body and its needs, with the need for good food, the need for sunshine, the need for exercise, then it's kind of like they start to move up the hierarchy. I think most people are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Yeah.
right? So I'm kind of picturing something like that pyramid structure where having more energy, having more physical energy then causes you to sort of look around at your life and say, what am I doing? Like, does my present job or way of making a living fulfill me? How are my relationships? And so people just kind of move up that pyramid as a consequence of the health benefits that they're experiencing from a whole food plant-based diet. And then at some point, it's like that spiritual drive that I think is built into every human being, that starts to wake up as well. So I see all of that as being really facilitated by being on a plant-based diet. Now, is every spiritual person on earth on a plant-based diet? Well, clearly no, but I think it's just easier. It's just easier to wake up that side of yourself. And particularly if you love animals, then I think it's really critical, because waking up to the fact that animals are exploited, enslaved, abused, tortured, and murdered, and not being in denial of those facts anymore is a really pivotal part of your spiritual awakening, because your spiritual awakening is about facing truth about yourself, truth about the world that you live in. And if you're engaging actively in that untruth that's perpetuated in our society, so untruths about animal products being necessary for human health when they're not, untruths about the notion that animals are well treated in agricultural systems when they're not, untruths like humane slaughter, a term that, I mean, I shouldn't laugh, I suppose, because it's barbaric, but how do you even wrap your head around the idea of humane slaughter? I would like to kill you, but don't worry, I'll do it as nicely as I can.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
No.
So when you kind of get yourself out of that system of perpetuating untruths, again, I think that's a really pivotal step in your own, or step on the path of your own spiritual awakening. It's just about owning up to truth, owning up to reality.
Yeah, definitely. And on top of that, I believe that, you know, because these animals have lived in such a way, and before they are going to be slaughtered, to name that horrible word, they become traumatic, you know, and that energy is captured in their body. And as humans, we consume that, and then we're surprised that we feel stressed and we create dis-ease, and, you know, we feel really bizarre and weird and whatever else it is. I believe that we eat all of that and consume all of that as well at the same time.
I think it was Tolstoy who said, "Wherever there are slaughterhouses, there will be wars." There's a direct link in so many ways on multiple different levels on the way that we treat animals and the way that we feel within ourselves and the way that we treat other human beings.
Yeah.
Passion starts with the least powerful in society, the most voiceless, and that's animals.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's why I love what I do, to be able to give them a voice, right? So yeah, absolutely. And I believe that in the same matter, you do that for the humans as well. The way I experience working with you and you, especially the wisdom that you have around this, is just absolutely amazing. That you help people give their body a voice. You know, 'cause- do you know what I mean?
Yes, yes. And again, I mean, in the same way that as a society, we have learned to become disconnected to the truth about how we treat animals. Most people are profoundly disconnected from their bodies, and this starts in childhood. And it happens. I mean, it's not that parents wake up one morning and decide they're really going to mess their kid up, right? It's just that, we have various cultural beliefs, and most people are raised in such a way that they suppress feelings and experiences that are mediated to them through their bodies. And they grow up with the sense or the felt belief, if you like, that certain emotions are wrong. And I guess the other thing, that one of the elements of my work that I find most gratifying is bringing to people's attention the fact that ambivalence is a normal human experience. So in other words, when people come to see me and they have a health challenge that they want to work on, most of them, by the time they get to me, they've done a little reading about it, they've got themselves relatively informed, and so they have a bit of an idea about what they should be doing, and yet they're not doing it. And the majority of people, they think that that means there's something wrong with them. They think that they mustn't have enough willpower, or that they're stupid, or that they just haven't suffered enough. And to me, that's simply an ambivalence issue. And ambivalence is normal to human beings. So by ambivalence, I mean, it's like on the one hand this, but on the other hand that. On the one hand, I don't want to have my health problem. I want to be well. I want to lose the weight. I want to get off my medications or whatever it is the person's dealing with. And so I understand that to do all of that, I've got to, stop eating this and start eating that and do yoga and get to bed on time and all these other crazy radical things.
Yeah.
Like stop eating crap, eat fruit and veg, get a bit of regular physical activity and meditate. Whoa, that's so nuts. How could you say that to me?
Exactly. Are you kidding me?
That's dangerous, surely. So on the one hand, they know all of that. On the other hand, there's a pull toward their pre-existing habits and all of the ways in which they've been brought up, like the foods that they were brought up with as children that have an emotional significance to them, or the activities that they participate in with their friends, like drinking or smoking even. And so the ambivalence comes in where people are like, well, I want to change, but boy, change is hard. Well, it is. That's the reality. It is. Some changes are harder than others, but let's just be perfectly upfront about this. Change is hard. And if you're a person who's wanting to change but struggling with it, welcome to the human race. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just experiencing a normal human degree of ambivalence. And I think when the problem is reframed like that, people kind of go, whew, all right, now we've got that out of the road, I'm able to get started.
Exactly. Yeah, that's fascinating too, because even in certain elements of helping people through things and with coaching and mentoring and even talking to animals, and they tell me this is what I would like to see for the family that I live in to make the changes for them. People say, yep, that's what I'm going to do, but then nothing happens.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're being too stubborn or proud, or they know it better to not do it, but they do themselves, and in the long run the animals as well, such a disservice, by going down that path.
100%. And a big part of that is just failing to recognize the nature of ambivalence and the fact that it is really intrinsic to human beings, because we have multiple parts. I don't mean in some sort of dissociative personality disorder kind of sense, but we have multiple parts. We have multiple parts of our brain that or multiple personality structures, if you want something a little more abstract than that, that pull us in different directions. So, you know, we want change, but we also fear it. We want the longer term satisfaction of living in a healthy body that is, let's face it, attractive. Most people want to be better looking. I think that's probably fairly normal, and I don't knock that motivation. It's not as spiritual as some, but it'll do for starters. And then on the other hand, we also want the pleasure of that, whatever the heck it is that we crave. We want that now. So that's what people are always kind of, that's the calculus that they run through. You know, how much do I want that healthy outcome that I envisage versus how much do I want that Krispy Kreme donut right now?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it's really tuning in as well to what would we like to create for ourselves that gives us the best experience possible. You know, and that's something that I really tune into lately. If I do this, will that give me the experience? Will that give me, you know, exactly that what I want to create for myself? And once you step into that and you really feel into that, the nutrition part it supports it.
I could not
really
agree.
Supports it.
Yeah, one of my favorite books that I often lend out to clients is called The Pleasure Trap by Alan Goldhammer and Doug Lisle. And the Pleasure Trap, I mean, it's an exceptionally good book. Many people have had their lives transformed from it. The primary thing that I got out of reading this book was really to understand and to focus on the differential between pleasure and happiness. So happiness is not a feeling. Happiness is a mood. Happiness, you might say, is a state. And we can be happy. I'm not talking about, you know, happy, clappy, kumbaya all the time, but we can be more or less happy on a consistent basis. Life happens, challenges happen. There will be times when you don't feel happy, but we can be fairly consistently happy, because while the amplitude of happiness is lower than the amplitude of pleasure, the duration of happiness can be considerably longer. Whereas pleasure is like that short, sharp spike. Okay, so when you eat let me pick some other food that people go a bit gangbusters about. Okay, chocolate. When you eat chocolate, you probably will, if you like chocolate, get a spike of pleasure. Like, it's really intense. Yeah. All the sensory elements of that and the chemical constituents of it, like, you're going to get that spike of pleasure. How long does it last? Chocolate does not make you happy, contrary to the Cadbury's that promotes it as being the key to happiness, isn't it? I mean, they sell the stuff, but it doesn't make you happy. Newsflash, everyone, chocolate doesn't make you happy. When you think about the happiest people on earth, they're not scarfing down chocolate all the time. They're engaged in meaningful activity. They have close ties with their community. Many of them have a religious faith or orientation or some sort of spiritual practice. They're living meaningful, purposeful lives. They're taking care of their bodies in order that they can contribute more and live better. That's happiness, not chocolate.
No, exactly. Yeah. And that's something that I've experienced myself. Before I decided to become vegan, I went on almost like a 2 or 3 year exploration journey on how food makes me feel and how food gets my body to work. Yeah. And one of the main things that I think back of quite often is how beef makes me feel. So, for example, when I eat beef, I don't necessarily have that spike going into happiness, but it was enjoyment for me because I loved the taste, I loved the structure.
Yeah.
Some people might gross out, but I always felt the rawer, the better.
Right. Interesting. Yeah.
But within a time span of half an hour to an hour, I started to feel really seedy.
Yeah.
And no matter how well the beef was cooked, and I would compare it to having a bottle of wine, that type of seediness and weirdness. And so that was the first meat that I cut out straight away, because I thought, I don't want to feel like that anymore.
And that goes back to the communication that I mentioned before, like the way that an animal product communicates to your body, like the way the constituents of that communicate to your body. What a clear example of that you just gave, where, okay, you've got the pleasure, that's just right here, that's in the mouth. That's the mouth and the brain. I mean, obviously the pleasure centers in the brain is saying, oh, this is fabulous, you know, love biting into this, love the taste, love the smell, you know, love the texture about it. But that's just so surface level. When that food actually gets into your body and begins communicating with your cells, there's a whole different picture that emerges.
Yes.
Absolutely. Whole different experience.
Yeah, definitely.
I love that you shared that. That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's one of these things, you know, that I sometimes think back of, because, okay, being plant-based, you often think back, well, I do anyway, like, why did I even eat that all the time? You know, and I have been through stages of going vegetarian, not having the right education, because you mentioned 1986, 87. That was about the time I became vegetarian, because I saw cruelty on TV. And I can remember this very clearly. It was on Christmas Day. My mum had just cooked the most beautiful Christmas dinner, and this rabbit came on the table. And I said to my mum, I'm not having that. And she said, but you always eat meat, like, it's fine, you love it. And I go, no, I'm not having that. So from that day, I never ate meat. Because I didn't know better, and there wasn't the education around it, and I didn't know how to really listen to my own body of how it feels. I got sick. So when I was about 21, I had to go back to eating meats again. Because my doctor told me to. You're lacking in this, you're lacking in that. They didn't know any better.
Oh, look, 100%.
You started eating all that stuff again, but
it can be done wrong. There's no doubt about it. I see a lot of people on vegetarian and vegan diets who haven't got themselves educated and are doing it wrong, and their health suffers as a consequence. So
yeah, definitely.
And I have to say, I wasn't very well informed when I first went vegetarian, and I didn't enjoy a lot of health benefits from it. I wouldn't say I was the world's worst vegetarian, but I certainly wasn't the most, you know, health-oriented vegetarian when I first changed. But because for me, it was just about, oh, I don't want to eat animals anymore, as opposed to how can I look after this body of mine in a way that sort of supports and nurtures me, so that I can, you know, get on with my work in the world, which is the way that I look at it now. It's kind of like, I don't get caught up with health as a means in itself. Health is a means to an end. Whereas I don't think health was even on the table at all for me back then. I guess it's not when you're 15.
Not really. I don't think so.
Unless you've already had some serious health challenges, you know. But yeah, I see health as being the means to an end. In other words, I want to keep having the energy, the vitality level that I have now, so that I can continue doing the work that I love and helping people until I'm 95 or something. I mean, why not?
Exactly. Yes. I mean, these days we live longer anyway, so, you know, you don't want to be retired. Well, I don't see myself getting retired at 60, 65.
Retirement, what is that? That's a strange word.
That's less than 20 years from now. Oh dear. No. Let's keep going.
No way, not doing that.
No way. And so I mean, being plant-based has had a major impact for me as well on how I connect with myself and with the spirit world and with the animals, because like you said before, people come up to you and say, I feel lighter, you know, even after the first couple of days, perhaps. For me, it gives me more clarity as well. Not just feeling lighter, but that cloudiness in the brain has completely disappeared. And I feel that when I meditate and when I really start to tune into me, my essence, then it's much more clear and the messages come through easier.
Yeah.
So it has, in that aspect, a lot more benefit as well.
Oh man, I hear that a lot too. Aside from the feeling lighter, the other thing I hear the most from people is the term that people often use is brain fog. They'll say, I just don't have that brain fog anymore. It doesn't feel like I've got a bowl of porridge in my head rather than a brain, you know. I think more clearly, and I'm just more here. I'm more present. Yeah. And again, I mean, you know, we are these spiritual beings having a physical experience. So our ability to connect spiritually is very much grounded in the health and well-being of our physical bodies. I believe that anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you nourish your body, and you have that quality of physical energy, yeah, I'm convinced it translates to a greater quality of spiritual energy as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, I totally agree with that for sure. So how would someone start? Because I can appreciate that some people in the audience are not plant-based, and probably most of the people in the audience are not plant-based.
Absolutely.
And quite a majority of them are plant-based. So I'm sure they're sitting here going, yep. Yeah,
we're preaching to the choir. Yeah. So for those
who are very curious, to think, oh, let's dab into that. I would like to see what happens if I perhaps do that. What is the best way for them to start, perhaps?
Yeah, I really like the crowding out strategy. In other words, where people will often get caught up or stuck, and this goes back to what I was saying before about ambivalence, is the roadblock that they hit in their head is the notion of giving up. So, you know, giving up meat or giving up cheese or giving up eggs. So I love the crowding out strategy, which is where rather than giving up, you just say, I'm going to eat more vegetables, more fruits, more whole grains, more legumes. I'm going to eat more fresh and wholesome and delicious food, foods as grown, foods that look kind of like they did when they were hanging off a tree or off a vine or growing under the ground or somewhere or other. So in other words, crowd out the lower vibration foods, the less wholesome foods, the more highly processed foods, just crowd them out with the healthier foods. And as you do that, you'll notice, I love what you said before about tuning into your body and just kind of like almost like gauging or measuring the response in your body to different foods. So notice how you feel after you eat fresh, ripe fruits compared to after you eat a bowl of sugary cereal. Notice how you feel when you eat a big salad with a baked potato and some hummus on top compared to when you eat a burger. And just start to crowd in all of these wholesome foods. And most people find that the more they move in that direction, the more changes they end up wanting to make. Because it's kind of like that immortal scene in When Harry Met Sally, you know, where she's faking orgasm in the restaurant, and the woman goes to signals the waiter, I'll have what she's having. Well, you want to have more. You know, it's like, I want to have more of what I'm having. I want to have more energy. I want to have more clarity. I want to have more of that peaceful, happy gut after a meal rather than that feeling of you know, having swallowed an elephant and then it takes, you know, 16 hours to digest. So you just feel better and you want more of that. And that tends to just, you know, lead people along the path rather than having them sort of, you know, feel like they've got to be dragged along it, kicking and screaming.
Yeah, exactly. And you reminded me when you talked about the journal, to write it down, to keep that diary, because that's what I did in the beginning as well, was to keep that diary on how you feel and actually recognize, hey, I'm actually starting to feel much better as well.
Yes.
Black and white.
Absolutely, because humans, the nature of being human is that we forget pretty quickly, and we're always kind of adjusting to the reality around us. And so you may, unless you journal it, you may not register that your sinuses have cleared up, or you're not waking up with a headache every day, or you're going to the bathroom a lot more easily. and every day, maybe twice a day or even more. So if you're not journaling those things, they might just slide right on by. They might escape your notice, but it's great to journal those so that you can celebrate your progress. I think that's the other thing I'd say about getting started. People beat themselves up for not being at the destination. They say, well, I want to lose 20 kilos and I want to be 100% plant-based and I want to get off my blood pressure meds and have normal blood pressure all by myself, and I'm not there yet. What's wrong with me? As opposed to saying, okay, that's my course. Like, I'm just going to set that on the GPS. Like, you know, when you hop in the car to go somewhere you've never been, and so you set the GPS to say, okay, this is where I want to go. And all you need for that GPS to work properly is it needs to know where you are now, and it needs to know your destination. And back in the old days, we used to have street directories. Remember those? And you'd have to sort of figure out the whole route along the way, and it was tough. Whereas now you just kind of program the GPS and you just go, right, I'm going to drive, and you're not saying, oh my God, do I have to turn left at this street? What if I take the wrong turn? Because the GPS will just say, you know, in 500 meters, take the third exit on the roundabout. And so all you're paying attention to as you drive these days is what is the very next step that I need to take to get to my destination, okay? Whereas when people are here and they want to be there in lifestyle terms or in health terms, they're forever saying, I'm not there yet, I'm not there yet. Oh, it's so hard to get there, right? So just know where you want to go. Have some kind of vision. It'll change over time. That is the difference with the GPS thing, right? Because people get different ideas as they go along, and that's fine. As you evolve as a person, your idea of what the destination actually is will evolve too. But just take the very next step. What is the next step? The next step can be taken the very next time that you open your mouth to put some food in it. You know, if you just make the decision, I'm not going to go down to the corner shop and buy a, you know, deep fried what's-in-a-jigget for the very next thing that I eat. The very next thing that I eat is going to be a banana, or I'm going to eat a salad, you know, like a proper salad with vegetables. Just the very next step. That's all you need to focus on. Right? So have some idea of the destination in mind, but rather than mess your own head up with how far you are away from your destination, just focus on the very next thing that you need to do. That's also helpful because when you go off track, and you will, you know, everyone listening there, you will go off track. That's just being human. That's being an imperfect human in a world in which it is very challenging to live healthfully. Alan Goldhammer, I mentioned before, the co-author of The Pleasure Trap, he has this saying that I use a lot. He says, we live in a world that is perfectly designed to make us fat, sick and miserable. And lots of people profit, lots of organizations profit from you being fat, sick and miserable. So it's hard to reconfigure your life in order to live in such a way that you have a healthy body and that you make health promoting choices in a world that really wants you to be fat, sick and miserable so they can make more profit off you. Just being completely cynical about this. So when people make not so very good choices, they get into this mindset of, oh no, I've messed up. I can't do this health thing. That's for other people, but I don't have the willpower, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not whatever enough, I don't know. None of that is true. All you need to do to get back on track is it's like the very next thing that you do. Let it be something health promoting. Have a sip of water. You know, get up off your chair and walk around the office and, I don't know, go to the water cooler and do a couple of squats or something. Just like the very next thing that you do. Just choose for it to be something that supports and promotes your health. And that way it's kind of like, you know, because, you know, sometimes even when you have a GPS, you still sort of miss the cue when you go off track. And the GPS doesn't shout at you, you stupid person, I told you to turn right there. Why didn't you? It just sort of does a little reconfigure, and it says to get back on track, you know, you just need to turn right here and then go 500 meters and turn right. You'll be back on path. The GPS never says you're an idiot. You're never going to get there. I don't know why you even bother. It just figures out how to get you back on the road.
Exactly. And it really, this morning I spoke to one of the other speakers and we were talking about not living in the future. And this reminded me of that, you know, because
Yeah.
that's a similar thing. We live too much in the future because that is where we want to go. So let's focus on that. But we forget that we're over here, you know, and
Yes.
we forget that when you're present and you just take that one step each
Mm.
day, then that will
Mm.
bring you closer to where you really want to be. And if that changes, if something shifts, then you can change what you want to create. It's not set in
Yeah.
concrete, right?
100%. 100%. You can change. Yeah, you can definitely change that destination. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you probably will.
Oh,
That's
yes.
part of the normal process of human development. It's interesting that you raise that point about the future, because when we're thinking about what our goal is, we imagine how we'll feel when we get there. But the me that's imagining my future goal and achieving that is not the future me. I'm going to be a different person by the time I get there. And that's why our goals can change over time, because every time that you make a choice, that you decide to go for that walk, or drink the water rather than the soft drink, or whatever it is, that's sort of very subtly changing you. It's quite literally changing your brain. It's changing the neuronal firing patterns in your brain. And as you change bit by bit by bit by bit by bit, as you develop as a human being, that idea of what you want in this future, that's going to change as well. And I love that. Like, let's just embrace that.
Exactly.
So it's great to have goals and aspirations, but just recognize that present you is imagining that you'll feel a certain way when you reach that goal or destination. You can't possibly know that that's how you'll feel.
Yes. Yeah. And, and because we have those different experiences, and I see it as up leveling, because the more you experience and the more you become present, you're being leveled up. Your energy changes, you shift, you tune into the highest states of being, and therefore that can shift. And I think the overall destination will not necessarily change, or at least the purpose of why you want to reach the destination doesn't necessarily change, but it's how you're going to walk that path. Will shift as well.
I think too, the process is just getting clearer and clearer about how it is that you are going to serve. Okay. So, what is it that you bring to the world, to other people, to animals, to the environment? And that process of up-leveling, I love that term, by the way, and basically developing your spiritual connection is just getting clearer and clearer on how you're meant to show up and serve.
Yes.
And again, I mean, and the foundation of that is having a strong, healthy body. So it's not some sort of what's the word I'm looking for? It's not selfish to have a concern about your health. It's not vain. I'll admit, people often do have a vanity motive woven in there. They want to have a bikini body. Like I said before, I'm not averse to that. I think if you want to keep going with this, you need to end up with a motivation that's a bit more inspiring than that, but it's fine as a way to get started. But yeah, it's not puerile or beneath you to invest in your health. It's actually the necessary precondition for you having just the physical capacity to live a life of service, so that you can bring your spiritual gifts to the world and utilize them to the fullest degree.
Oh, absolutely. That's wonderfully said. Wow. So what is the one thing that you would like to share with the audience that they can perhaps use, implement, or try out themselves?
The one thing that I want to share first up is just to say, I said before that change is hard, I guess I want to clarify that by saying change is hard because of our thinking. And if you do focus on just the very next step, it gets a lot easier because you're not thinking about, for the rest of my life, I can never eat cheese again. You're just thinking, like, for the next bite of food that I eat, it's not going to have cheese in it. Okay, that's manageable. So what I would, but my piece of advice would be choose one thing. One thing that is going to make a measurable difference in your life, and just focus on that. When people start getting tuned in to health, they will often subscribe to all sorts of different newsletters, and they'll join various Facebook groups, and they'll end up on a social media feed of this and that and the other. And they're constantly getting bombarded with ideas about what they should do. You should get off gluten. You should do intermittent fasting. You should do high intensity interval training. You should drink alkalized water, like whatever the heck, whatever the trendy thing is. Now, you should do a cleanse. You should, and people just get like, oh, what should I do? What should I do? There's so many things to do. Just pick one highly leveraged action that you can take and start there.
Yeah.
So if you know that you need to get more physically active, don't spend the next 3 years trying to figure out what pair of running shoes you should get, or whether you should enroll in CrossFit, or whether you should do more cardio or more weights. Just get the most comfortable pair of shoes that you own on, get outside your front door and go for a walk. That's it, folks. The most natural form of human locomotion. We call it walking. If you've been sedentary, if you haven't exercised in ages, just get your shoes on and go for a walk. And then do it every day. Okay, do it every single day. So whatever behavior, whatever highly leveraged behavior you choose, say with food. In that case, I would say, pick something like every day I'm going to eat a large raw salad, or every day I'm going to eat, a large serving of green vegetables. I'm going to eat some broccoli, or I'm going to eat some kale, or whatever the heck. Just do that one thing every single day. Now, let's go back to the walking thing. So after a couple of weeks of walking, you might notice that you feel stronger and feel faster, and you might decide, I'm just going to run from, to the next telegraph pole, and then I'll walk again. And then when I catch my breath, I'll run to the next pole. Or you might decide after a couple of weeks of walking, this feels pretty good, but I've noticed I'm not as flexible as I like. I might look into, joining a yoga class, or even just doing a YouTube yoga video. Look it up. There's heaps of them. Ditto for, just eating that one salad a day, or eating a big serve of broccoli every day. After you've been doing that for a couple of weeks, you're going to be noticing you feel better. Maybe your taste will already have changed by then. That happens. And then you kind of go, what's next? So back to the leveling up metaphor that you used before, but just pick that one thing and don't nitpick about it. Like, if your diet right now is a total mess, if you start off the day with a coffee and wash down a donut with that coffee, or you don't eat until 3 o'clock and then you go and get a, McDisaster meal with the works, and then you eat a pizza at 9 o'clock at night. Don't even don't try to start with the idea of intermittent fasting. You just need to stop eating crap and eat some actual food. Now, if you want to fine tune it further down the track, knock yourself out, but start with the highest leverage move first.
Yeah.
Okay. Just stop eating crap and get some plants on your plate. So keep it simple. Be consistent. If you do have a day when you don't walk, or when you don't eat your salad or whatever, remember that the next thing that you eat, or the next thing that you do, make it a health promoting thing. So there's people often talk about falling off the wagon. And I watched a great video by Howard Jacobson and Josh LaJourney the other day, where they talked about, there is no wagon. There isn't something that's trundled off and left you behind. That's just a story that you tell yourself. You just made a not very good decision, and all you need to do to course correct is the next decision you make it a good one.
Yeah. Fantastic. That is awesome advice. I love it. And a good
I hope that helps a lot of people.
Very good reminder. Fantastic. Thank you, Robin, for your wonderful time, your amazing experience and wisdom. I'm sure a lot of people have absolutely enjoyed this conversation. So thank you so much.
I have enjoyed it so much. It's like we really went down deep today, and it's great. I hope this really does make it just a lot more straightforward for a lot of people to take care of themselves better.
Oh, I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. So thank you again.
My pleasure.
Cheers.